Don't Envy by Taras Shevchenko. Translated by John Weir. Don't envy, friend, a wealthy man. A rich man's life is spent without a friend or faithful love. Those things he has to rent. Don't envy, friend, a man of rank, his powers based on force. Don't envy, too, a famous man, the man of note well knows. The crowd's acclaim is not for him, but for that thorny fame. He wrought with labor and with tears, so they'd be entertained. But then when young folk gather round, so fine they are and fair, you'd think it's heaven. Ah, but look, see evil stirring there. Don't envy anyone, my friend, for if you'll look, you'll find that there's no heaven on the earth, no more than in the sky. Taras Shevchenko, a man born of the Ukrainian countryside near Kiev under the Russian Empire, like many of his folk, to slavery, who went on to found a nation in ideas. He was also a great admirer of the actor Ira Aldridge, an African American man of the United States. One night, after a performance of Ira's in St. Petersburg, the two creative forces met. Shevchenko made a portrait of Ira, while he laughed in lightened spirit. The two, who, through their hardships, were able to become beacons of imaginative inspiration and joy, would end up dancing the night away, singing the songs of their peoples. I wonder how they shared ideas, life stories, despite their language barrier and need for a translator. One was born a slave, whose art gained him his freedom. The other was raised in a community with many who'd just broken their chains and were using their creativity to free their spirits, who in his life pioneered his art form to the hatred and suppression of those who ruled his society, judging him solely on what they saw and not the man himself, leading him to travel the world performing his talents in search of something more. While Ira was born free and Taras to bondage, both men were oppressed for their work and for who they were. But both of them, I'm sure, could see that they and their peoples had a lot in common. For when the great artists of Taras's land saw the young man in chains, with amazing potential and a creative spirit like none they'd ever seen before, being used for profit by his owner, the artists wanted to help set their fellow creative spirit free. They formed an auction, donated their own works, and with that, they earned him his liberty. The creative soul set him free. He then went on to live the ideals he brought about through his work, to free those in bondage, to educate the masses, to bring liberty to all, whom for many, like him, had only known the chains. I can see how the souls of Ira and Taras were able to dance in such tandem. As theater was the spark for Ira, painting and writing was the spark for Taras. And he shined his spark so bright, all his people saw it. Because of it, he faced years of repression, imprisoned for his words by the emperor himself, who made it so that he was under the strictest surveillance and did not have the right to paint or write. but he kept on going. Once again, he was freed, and Taras laid the foundation for his people's homeland. Then, as his final day on this plane of existence passed, just weeks later, the law was signed. And finally, the chains that had once held him as a child and his people for generations were broken. And not long after, so too were the chains for the rest of Ira's people. To this day, their stories live on and remind us of the unifying force that all living beings strive for and deserve: freedom.